Okay, so this is part 2, and we're going to talk about inequalities and solving them. Okay? And we kind of already talked about in the word problem 1 the process of solving. So jump right in here, and then we'll worry about the graphs here in just a sec. Okay, so here's our problem. 3.2x minus 24.8 is less than negative 50.4. Okay, and all these things right here, I'll cover this up, is your answer selection. So let me just, I don't want to confuse the issue here. Let me just cover it up here. Cover it up. Let me cover it up with something a little bit better. Well, maybe. I can find some blank paper here. Here we go. Okay. So, just like I talked about in the other video, anytime you want to get x by itself, you have to undo stuff in the opposite order of operations. So, what you look for first is there something that's added or subtracted to the glob of algebra that has the x? Well, sure enough, 24.8 is being subtracted from 3.2x. So we need to move that guy, get rid of him here, move him over here by doing opposites. Alright? So opposites means, if he's subtracted, we're going to add him here to make him go to 0. Alright? So we add him here, that goes to 0, I'm just going to cross that out. Whatever I do on one side, and it doesn't matter if I have an inequality or an equal side, the process is the same. I'm going to come over here and I do the same exact thing. I'm going to add 24.8. Sorry, my 8s are kind of crappy. To the negative 50.4. Okay? Now I don't want to get into positive and negative. Just use your calculator. Let's just not worry about that. So what's left is 3.2x is less than, and when I do the math, I'm still going to have a negative number, but 50.4, negative 50.4 plus 24.8 is a negative 25.6. Okay? So the next thing that we do is anything that's multiplied or divided to the variable, we do opposite to undo it. So 3.2 is multiplied to x. So to undo multiplication, we divide. And we divide everything, both sides. Oh, whoops. Not by the x. We leave the x alone. My bad. Okay, so 3.2 divided by 3.2 is just 1. Right? And 1 likes to be invisible, and that's cool. So I'm just going to leave that alone and have the x. And then I'm going to do this math right here. Okay, and that's going to be a negative 8. Okay? So what this means is x is less than negative 8. Okay, now I'm just gonna draw a number line here. Or let me see, let me look. Yeah, no, I'm just gonna draw it. Okay, so just real quick, we know a number line, we have a 0, and we have positive numbers on this side, yada yada yada. And on the left side of 0, they're negative numbers, and we get more negative as we go. Alright? Now, I didn't make a very good scale. I'm just going to throw in negative 8 right here. Okay? And I'll just throw in 8 over here, so it kind of equals out. So what this says is x is less than. If it's just less than, it can't be 8. No, I need to make a better graph. Let me write a better graph. I apologize. I'm going to make this 0. I'm going to make this negative 8 here, negative 16, yada yada yada. And then I'll just make this positive 8, positive 16. You get the idea, hopefully. Okay, so we're going to forget this because I didn't make a very good graph. Alright, so what this means is that since there's no equal sign under here, it means x cannot be 8. It's not negative 8. Alright, so he's not negative 8, so we put a circle, an open circle around it. It cannot be 8, but he's less than. Now sometimes these guys are backwards. You have to read it this way. But this guy's right. Less than. So what's less than negative 8? Well, something that's more negative than negative 8. So everything this way, okay, is less than negative 8. So If we were doing this in class, you could just scribble all day long, okay? If we were picking something here, and my color printer didn't print out very good, looking. Their graphs aren't very good. So I'm just going to ignore that for a minute because I don't see any negative numbers on there. Okay? Another way, on the graph, you would see the red line go like this. Whoops, it would be an open circle at -8. Okay? Alright. So let's look at this one. I kind of did the graph better. Alright. Here, I notice they have these Z's. Okay, they're just trying to trip you up. Don't click the Z's because it's an N. But the same steps. Right? We're going to subtract 65 because it's being added. Subtract 65. I'm going to rewrite the equation over here. So I'm left with -8n less than or equal to whatever 77 minus 65 is, 12. Okay? And then here, since negative 8 is multiplied to n, I've got to undo it by opposites. So I'm going to divide by -8, divide by -8, and so n is. Now, here's the trick. The problem with inequalities is anytime you multiply or divide by a negative, like we just did here, this guy flips directions. Okay? Because of the negative. If this was a positive 8, nothing would change, just like in our last problem. Alright, and then the other problem is that this is a gross number. Alright, if you look at your answers, you don't see any fractions on there, right? So go ahead and just get the decimal and do 12 divided by -8, and you get -1.5. Okay? So what this says is n is greater than or equal to -1.5. So when you have this little guy right here, that means we're looking for a closed dot, not an open circle. Okay? So it's either going to be this one or that one. Now he's greater than, so it's got to be bigger. So let's kind of get in here. Alright, what didn't print was my negatives. I see the problem. These should all be negatives. So -1.5 is right in the middle between -1 and -2. So we have a closed dot there, and it's greater than, so bigger. So this is our correct graph. So hopefully that makes sense. Now then, this other problem is the same thing other than they gave you yucky fractions and it's an equal sign. Alright, so let me tell you about an equal sign. Once you solve the problem, it's just going to be a dot. There's no shading on anything else because it just equals that number. Okay? If you want to change all this to decimals and just use your calculator, go for it. Alright? Just make life easy. So I'm going to rewrite this. 5 7/8 is 5.875. Just be careful with your rounding, okay? Equals 3.3/8 is, yeah, 3.375 plus z. Alright, there's nothing here. There's only one step. Nothing's multiplied to z. We just have this 3.375 added. Okay? He's positive, he's added. We're doing the opposite. We're going to subtract him. Okay, this goes away. I'm left with z over here. And my answer is going to be whatever that is. It happens to be 2.5. Okay? So we're left with z equals 2.5. Alright, so looking for the graph, that's 1.5. Oh, there's 2.5. This one is over here on the negative side. My negatives didn't print out. That's not it. That's like huge. That's not it. So this is my graph. It's kind of silly graphing equal signs because it's just a dot, but nonetheless, this is the graph. Alright, so hopefully that makes sense. This is part 2, part 3 coming up next.